So after I think a 2-month hiatus, I don't think we ended up doing one last month for reasons. We are
I
back
think
to the
San Diego
massive.
Comic-Con reasons, right?
Yeah, San Diego Comic Con
Yeah.
reasons and just us the same reasons that we end up having like only 2 episodes that month. So, you know, um,
It's
yeah, we're
the
back at
summer.
the Massiverse, and we are talking about finally after our little introduction to him in the what do they call it, Supermassive in the
Yeah.
Supermassive one shot. We're talking about Rogue Sun.
Rogue
Now, this is
Sun, baby!
volume 1, the first 6 issues of this like other ongoing series besides Radiant Black in the Massiverse. Only 2 ongoings. So yeah, this is volume 1, also called Cataclysm. This is coming at us from writer Ryan Parrott of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Dead Day, and the artist Abel of Harley Quinn and Crimes of Passion. In addition to that, we have the letterer Becca Carey, and we have 2 colorists on different issues, Chris O'Halloran and Natalia Marcus. So that's the team.
Yeah, I think
Just
not at all a
quick warning.
surprise
Oh,
to
yeah.
see Ryan Parrott on there. We were talking about it.
Yeah.
Ryan Parrott and Kyle Higgins are like the Power Rangers guys
Yeah.
for the Boom Power Rangers run. So really makes so much sense for them to be collaborating on, especially on something as like Power Ranger inspired as
It's
the
so
Massiverse.
Power Rangers. We'll talk about one of the things. I want to talk about one of my like kind of gripes about the greater Massiverse, which isn't this book's fault, but just that I'm gonna want to hit on because now we've hit, I guess, except no one. We've now hit like all of the series for the most part. And I have read No One. I know you haven't yet, but I have read some of No One. But yeah, just our quick warning at the beginning of this episode: spoilers ahead for volume 1 of Rogue Sun, and maybe probably not huge spoilers, but spoilers for anything up to this point in the Massiverse.
Yeah, since
because
we've discussed all those books already.
We don't have to worry about any spoilers for anything past volume 1 of Rogue Sun because we have not read it. So,
correct. And if you're worried about spoilers, this is a book that has huge spoilers. So, brace yourself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you haven't read it, read it, come back, or just be spoiled and then read it. But, yeah, let's talk about volume 1 of Rogue Sun. I'm just going to start by saying this is a very interesting, especially compared to a lot of the rest of the Massiverse, which I think is, we've talked about, like, the Massiverse as being, like, nothing crazy, but just, like, a really well done,
not
story.
Reinventing the wheel, but being a really, really good wheel.
I'm going to say this kind of breaks that a little bit. This does some weird things. Kind of, maybe the greatest of which being having, like, the bully be the main like having a school bully be like
so
your protagonist, which
like,
is
I feel like
really interesting in a really cool way.
I keep trying to remember what I'm thinking of that also kind of does that. There's definitely something, like some very important piece of media, or very prolific piece of media that has a bully main character, and for the life of me I can't remember what it is.
I don't know what it is.
But it is a super cool and not often done move.
No, I like that quite a bit. Especially because when we started reading, because I literally actually I had made a note that I then ended up deleting once I realized, because we saw Byron and Dylan in the opening. I was like, oh, Byron, there's a main character. Like, let's get him. I'm like, that's cool. The Cryptoverse's main character is called Byron. Like, I'll say that because that's cool. And then it's like, oh, no, the bully's our main character. Interesting. I don't remember if his name was said in Supermassive, and I'm just like, misremembering, but I don't remember if it was or not.
If Dylan's name was said?
Yeah.
No, and I think I was asking if you knew anything about the Supermassive portrayal, because I think we might have both had the same thought with the Rogue Sun that we see in Supermassive, which was like a Massiverse annual that came out before the start of Rogue Sun. And was kind of the first appearance of Rogue Sun. I believe that was Marcus.
Is it Marcus? Okay. Yeah, that was what I thought you were going to ask. I was like, I could see that. I could see that. I
don't remember if they said his name, but I think certainly it was Marcus.
Okay. The interesting thing is, like, weirdly, because, like, not exactly, but weirdly, they have very similar characterizations to where you could, like,
I think it's a big part of the plot that they do. But speaking of the plot, do you want to do a quick...
What we get of Marcus is they kind of don't really right now, but they kind of... It's interesting.
Yes,
it's very interesting, because something I want to say about this book that I think is maybe one of the coolest things about this book is I don't know, maybe Dottie. Maybe I'll give Dottie the credit. But I don't know if there's a good person in this book. Like just like a straight up like
not
good like they all suck.
Hold up, before we get too much into it, run through the plot for us. Take us through the plot because we'll talk about Dottie.
Okay, so we'll go through the plot here quickly. Okay, so Dylan, kind of a school bully, like an interesting school bully who like doesn't really fully comprehend his own bullying. He's kind of like, we're friends, but also like, since I'm helping you with this thing you didn't ask for help for, and you're gonna, do whatever I say, I'm gonna shove you in a locker. So we have this school bully who goes home one day to his mother Gwen, and there's like what would you call him, like an estate?
A lawyer.
Yeah, like a lawyer who's like running an estate for Dylan's father, who he has not seen since he was 2 years old. And this guy's like, your father's dead. You got to come because we're reading the will. Also, I'm coming to you after the funeral for some reason because we care about you too, that little. But you got to come to the reading of the will, despite the fact you weren't invited to the funeral. And Dylan is just immediately ecstatic that his father's dead. And he's like, I hope this man suffered. Can you tell me if he suffered? Like, I want to know. And by the way, the lawyer says that he died in a car accident. We see before this that Rogue's son, which is very obviously already going to be the father, died, as Rogue's son, not in a car accident. We don't really see who did it at that point. But anyway, we go to this estate reading. We learn that Dylan has 2 half-siblings, Ari, a sister who is probably about his age is the vibe, maybe a little bit younger than him.
I think that she is at least not 16 yet, because there's a joke in there where he's like, are you old enough to drive? And she says, sure, clearly lying.
Well, where are they in the country? Because you can't drive at 16 in a lot of places in the country. So,
Oh, well, yeah. Bless my little Midwestern heart. Oh.
But yeah, no, so she's probably a year or 2 younger than him, I think is the vibe, but she's about his age compared to Brock.
I think at least 2, because he left.
You don't know how fast he moved on, man. Like,
I know how long a gestation period is for a baby.
She left when he was 2. Yeah. That tracks. I wasn't really.
So probably you're right. 2 or 3 years younger.
She's probably like 3 years younger than him.
Yeah.
So anyway. And Brock, who's like significantly younger, probably like a 10-year-old or something like that. That's kind
very
of
Damian Wayne coded, which made me laugh.
Yeah, and he's so. I want to talk about Brock, and we'll talk about Brock later. I think Brock is such an interestingly written character, and weirdly, at the end of the day, maybe one of the few people who aren't that bad of people.
Well, he's 10. How bad can he be?
Right. So interestingly, anyway, I'm going to keep rambling on little side tangents as we go through the plot here, but. Basically his father only has 2 like things that he gives away, and basically the first one, the entirety of his estate goes to his new wife, which makes sense, and then his rock that gives him his powers, which is given to Dylan, which is where we get what I think is one of the few missteps of this series, in my opinion, which is just one of the like most on the nose lines of dialogue with no like reaction I think I've ever seen in my life, which is, let me see if I can find it here really quickly because I do have issue 1 open.
Is it my son Dylan?
No. It's the line when it's the line where he's handed the stone. So, so Dylan, there's no easy way to say this. Your father didn't die in an automobile accident. He led a secret life as a masked vigilante, and it was his dying wish that you take up his mantle. You are the next Rogue son. And then his reaction's just, fuck me. It's the like little symbol.
I love the fuck me. I think the fuck me is very effective. What gets me specifically about this, and I know that we're being so bad about going through the plot, so we're gonna do no tangents, only plot after this. I believe in us. What gets me is that this lawyer character like doesn't come back up. I thought he was gonna be like a very Alfred-like figure, because it's like obviously he knows that Marcus was Rogue's son.
Well, he might come back.
He might come back.
I think that's one of the things when like you take a chunk of an ongoing like this and read it as a volume. Because there were multiple characters that I was like Dottie too, where I'm like, she doesn't really get as much as you'd expect if it was just a miniseries.
For sure, but she's clearly got like a place in Marcus's life and in his superhero thing. He does not. I fully thought that the lawyer was going to be like our Alfred character.
Yeah.
But he just is not in the rest of the volume. And I'm like, does this random man just know the identity of Rogue's son?
I don't know. And like I think a lot of the dialogue in this is like pretty solid to good. But that line is just wild.
It's a little
with
rough.
No reaction. I was like, I get it. We wanted to just get into it and get to the point. But God, there's no reaction from it. It's just oh yeah, no, your father was a superhero. I know we lied to you about that because obviously it's a big deal a few pages ago. But now that you've been chosen, yeah, let's just tell you. I agree with you though. The fuck manly, because I read that and I kind of went, well, fuck me, and then I looked at the thing and went, yeah.
But anyway, I dug that so much. But so he receives the Sunstone and becomes inheritor of Rogue Sun, much to the anger, disappointment, other negative emotions of his other children who wanted to inherit the stone. Again,
I'd say especially Brock,
very Damian Wayne coded.
Because Brock was very much in the "this is mine, this is my birthright" camp. Like you said, he's very Damian Wayne coded for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, then we get into it, which is essentially his mother being like, I don't know if you should do this, but it might be good for you. Just make sure school life comes first and superhero life comes second.
Well, I feel like it was much more because she and we learned that she and Marcus separated because he could not deal with both being a father, being a husband, and being Rogue
but that's much later. By the way.
She says that's why they ended up breaking up or separating, or why
we get the
more
flashback
accurately his father left them just in the dead of night. So she's very much it's a very deeply emotional scene, which is why I felt the need to clarify, because it is very funny that she's literally school life first, but it is also the very serious thing of your life first. Yeah. And I thought that was a really great kind of mother of a superhero attitude to take, because we'll get to Gwen. I love Gwen. I think her whole thing was so cool. We'll get to her though.
We'll get to Gwen. We'll absolutely get to Gwen. But anyway, so basically we get him fighting his first, I think now we're in issue 2, and we get him fighting his first villain, which is this werewolf. Oh no, sorry. First he goes after the Suave, which is a little thief dude who just kind of hands his ass to him, realizes that he's not the original Rogue Son, even teasing with if you can, just tell me your name, I'll hand myself in, because you're clearly not the real Rogue Son. But then
it was great. I love Suave.
Yeah. So anyway, after that we get the first real fight at the beginning of issue 2, which is with this redneck werewolf.
Hey,
who's part vampire,
half werewolf, half vampire.
I know. I said it. I said it.
And his name is Billy Bloodmoon or something, which is also hilarious.
So we get this really, really. I'm trying not to just give all the details, because otherwise this plot summary is going to last the entire episode. So, basically, we get this really, really good fight between the two of them as Marcus is trying.
Yes, to very important. Marcus's soul is in the Rogue Sun suit, and so Dylan can see and hear him, and Marcus is trying to mentor him, but he is Dylan's father who abandoned him as a baby and left his mom, so he's very against it. The way that he gets him to win the fight is by putting his kind of ghost mirage self between Billy Bloodmoon and Dylan and be okay, Dylan, punch me, and Dylan getting so pissed off that he ends up punching just full through him. It's so well done. It's a wonderful narrative mechanic in the book.
That is their second fight, by the way, that you've jumped to. The first fight, he barely survives because the sun comes out.
the sun comes up.
Yeah. But anyway, kind of jumping along here, he eventually kind of partners with Ari, and Ari shows him Dottie, who is basically the jailer of all of the villains that Rogue Sun defeats. She runs a jewelry store, and she traps these monsters, because Rogue Sun seemingly deals with a lot of mythical beasts, interestingly, compared to a lot of the other Massive
Artists. Supernatural and magic.
Yeah, despite his powers being very similar to the other heroes, and being here's a gem thing that you do.
I think his feels much more kind of mythological, as opposed to the very sci-fi of Radiant Black.
I think that's because of the context that we get with the villains and stuff. His power set is almost identical to all of them. He has a gem that he does all of they do. It's very similar to a lot of the other characters where they have a little.
His design is clearly very knight inspired. They call him a knight a number of
but he's still got that couple duo color, one bright color in black. Energy based power
in there.
I get. He's
like,
very
the power
similar to
set
all
is
of them.
similar,
They're all
for
very
sure.
similar
But
in
I
like their
think
vibes.
in
It's very Power Rangers
presentation,
esque. It's all Power Rangers esque. We're like, okay, yeah, maybe he's like the like a Dino, you know, Power Ranger instead of like one of the traditional Power Rangers. Like when you look at the Power Rangers like designs and stuff, but he's very similar in their look and powers and stuff. But his Rogues Gallery, I think, is incredibly different because it's very much more mythical based. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Dottie is the one who like captures these people, so she puts him in a diamond. I feel like I'm gonna end up missing something.
Bloodmoon.
Yeah. Oh, so then basically, as Marcus continues to try to like teach Dylan, and Dylan's like, no, I don't want you here. He's trying to get Ari to like figure out a way to get rid of him out of the gem. At this point, Marcus is like, okay, if you help me solve my own murder so that I can protect my family. And like, to be honest with you, I don't really care about you that much, and that's why I gave you the powers, because
like,
I didn't want
I gave
any
you the
of my
powers
family
so the
to
target
die.
would be on your back.
Yeah. So,
which was such a good reveal.
Funny. But also revealed to maybe not be, because of the immediate follow up, like not be fully true, because he talks about how he thinks it's somebody close to him that does it, and then like the first two suspects are his two other kids.
Yeah.
And so you get that backhanded of, is it maybe because he thought that they were the killers too, and that's like another reason? Anyway, not to track. So now basically he tells Dylan, like, I think it might be Brock. So we're gonna look into Brock. So they look into Brock
again, being this man's 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
Like,
so they're looking
to
Brock,
go back
has, like,
real quick to what you were saying, nobody's a good person in this book. Like, you mentioned Dottie, she is holding people in very weird prisons that we see a glimpse of with Billy Bloodmoon.
Yeah, but she's still like, she's giving movie nights and shit to these like awful beasts that like try to drain people's soul. I think she's doing her best. I think she's doing the best she can.
Best, but you know, I don't think she's necessarily a good.
Yeah, I'm gonna give her good person status in this world, in this book. Weirdly, Brock too, maybe, because Brock, we learned that a lot of what like comes, because Brock is like kind of the first setup suspect to be it's gonna be Brock, and once you kind of get the reveal that it's not, you kind of realize like, okay, yeah, maybe he's a little, you know, dickish to his half brother after his father died, but like, you know, he has the nice moment where he ends up hugging, and we'll get to that. But like, I think Brock at the end of the day actually ends up being a pretty nice kid.
I think that it's hard to give bad person status to a 10-year-old.
Yeah, very true. So anyway, we follow Brock, and he's meeting with, I believe, a witch doctor is what this is called, and he's trying to obtain a like weird mystical from another plane drug so that
like
he can bring
Death
his
Sage or something.
But meanwhile, Marcus sees this deal and he's like, "Oh, yeah, my son killed me. My son's the one who made the deal to kill me."
Marcus is a horrible person.
Go after those fuckers. Let's go. At the same time, though, he is very much like, once this witch doctor sees that Rogue Sun's there and thinks that Brock betrayed him and goes after Brock, Marcus is very much like, you have to save my son now.
Oh yeah, for sure. That doesn't make him not a bad person.
I'm just saying there's a lot of complexity to these like, dynamics and characters.
Especially, and we'll jump into it, especially when it comes to the idea of like being a superhero and being a good person. But so
rather being a superhero while being a bad person, I think is more of the vibe. So Witch Doctor kind of gets dealt with fairly easily compared to a lot of the other
there's a little
Witch Doctor seems to be a little bit of a bitch, like just a really scared, like he
didn't come here looking for a fight. He said he's like never messed with Rogue's son before.
Like Rogue's like just trying to fly off with him and like rips off his head instead. Like this man is an easy target.
To be clear, he's fine. The Witch Doctor's fine. He walks away.
But this man is an easy target.
I think the Witch Doctor keeps good person status.
That's fair.
He's and then, just selling grass to a child.
So anyway, spinning out of that, next up in kind of the list of targets is Ari releases one of the villains from Dottie's gems, and it's this like, I can't remember her name.
Like this soul sucker. It's Demonica, I think.
Soul sucking woman who's just terrifying. But weirdly, Ari was able to like bound her in a way where she can't kill. Because we find out that Ari isn't actually like, it's very much at this point now hinted that Ari is probably actually the killer, because she's trying to get the gem back from Dylan. We find out that she's not the killer, but rather is just like really pissed that Dylan has gotten the last,
and more so that Dylan isn't like respecting her father's legacy.
Yeah, and I think somewhat too the fact that he like told her he was trying to get rid of him, like, from the gem. And I think Arya and Brock are both like, we don't want you to get rid of our father's, like, consciousness that's still there.
Like, Arya is specifically, like, trying to save her father with this.
Yeah.
Because she's sending DeMonica after Dylan with the specific spell. Because I think the vibe is that she's, like, kind of a witch in training. It could be partially because she's often in, like, kind of a pleated skirt, which is very, like, young witch.
Well, she has, like, this weird, like...
She has this cool helmet,
Yeah, that she wears when she's, like, free, which is very, like, old school, like, kind of like Middle Ages, like, witch doctor type.
Yes,
I was trying to think of a word besides witch doctor, because obviously we had an actual witch doctor.
It's very Dr. Fate core.
That's the... Yeah. So anyway, like, that kind of mask. So I think you could absolutely be right in that kind of the vibe. Yeah, because
I think she's a little spellcaster in training, and that's going to be her role going forward. But she's put this spell on DeMonica so that she can only do things that are in pursuit of getting the Sunstone. And naturally, she's a demon, so she does some soul sucking along the way. But this brings
and
out
she also
Rogue
can't
Sun.
kill. That's like the big one there, which is like kind of Arya's like, she couldn't kill you because I'm not that mean. But anyway, this is when we get to what I think is the best issue of the bunch. We get to issue 5, which is where we see the return of the villain that killed Rogue Sun.
Cataclysm?
Cataclysm. And Cataclysm kind of comes in, kind of takes out DeMonica. We get a little bit of a prolonged fight with the three of them.
Takes out DeMonica.
Yeah. So, and then we get the reveal that, huge spoiler here. So if you're ever going to jump away to read this, this is the time. Okay, you're back. Okay, we find out that it was Gwen the whole time. Yes. And then interspersed in this issue, we get the backstory of Gwen and Marcus. Mm-hmm. And one, those scenes were just so phenomenally done. So and great. 2, the scenes with essentially the 3 characters, because Marcus is also there. And, like, Dylan between his father and his mother, who, like, can't actually interact with each other. So they're, like, yelling at each other through him.
Which, like, I mean...
One of the best, like, done.
We
like,
love
so
a heavy-handed metaphor in this house, like, personally.
It's just so well done, though. It's such a cool sequence. All dialogue's great. Like, you weirdly feel for Gwen at times. You feel like... They do a great job of actually making you sway when Dylan sways, like, between the two of them, where you're kind of, like... You're getting the scenes of, like, oh, Marcus is just so awful to her. And so you're starting to swing with him, and he's like, no, maybe you do deserve it, Marcus. And you're like, yeah, maybe you do, Marcus. And then you get the flashback of, like, her making a deal with not the devil, but essentially making a deal with the devil. Like, get these powers. And then you have, like, Rogue Sun turning, and you're like, oh, no, wait, what the fuck are you doing, Gwen? And it's kind so of like good.
This standing thought of, oh, Gwen killed Marcus.
Yeah,
like, it's tough to hold on to good person status when you literally kill the titular superhero.
No,
but
like, there's such cool things that you get. Also, get the scene of, like, him coming to her, because, like, this is where you get Marcus just being just so awful. Where he comes back, like, 6 months basically before the stuff of this book takes place, and he comes to Gwen and he's like, I am going to meet my son. I don't give a shit what you say. I'm a superhero. Nobody can stop me.
Also specifically saying, like, you're fucking our son up. His grades are slipping. He's a bully.
Yeah.
Like, it's bad.
Yeah. And she's like, no, you can't. And he's like, I'm not asking your permission. Like, I'm just going to do it. So she then goes and she's like, she seeks out this, I can't remember the name of, like, this entity that she ends up making a deal with. Mm-hmm. But she's like, I want him dead.
Boss.
Yeah. So she makes a deal with this entity. She eats a frog.
I believe it was
which, by the way, Swaff also ate a frog. Oh, sorry, she ate a dragonfly.
Swaff ate a tarantula.
Oh, he ate a tarantula. I thought that was a frog.
They're very present in my mind as 2 scenes that grossed me the fuck out.
Anyway, so then she gets these powers and she's able to, kill Marcus. But it's so cool. Everything in issue 5 is just so good.
Yeah,
it's such a phenomenal issue.
So rad having her ability to disrupt the sunsuit be tied to her love for the user of it, so she was able to disrupt it with Marcus and kill him, but she has just, like, this effect on it as well with her son inside it because she loves her son so much. And we'll hit some gray area on it, but also with her motivation in doing this being protecting her son, and so, like, there's just, it's so rad. But they finish their fight not at his father's behest, but because of his mother going to town on downtown New Orleans, Dylan does end up knocking her out. I believe using the Black Sun finally, right? Or did he not end up?
Yes, he uses the Black Sun finally, like obliterates her to the point where it for a moment it seems like she might be dead.
Dude, and then I was so freaked. I was so freaked.
Me too. I was like, she's dead. I was like, she's just fucking dead.
Especially because the entire time Marcus kept saying like, "Oh, her new powers will protect her."
And yeah, like, I thought he was bullshitting. I thought he was bullshitting. Right? That's why I was like, that's brutal, Marcus. Like, oh my god, this man's gonna hate you. But anyway, we get there. Dottie locks up his mom and is like trying to figure out. She tells him she'll figure out if there's a way that she can like undo the powers or whatever. And then we get kind of our nice ending. We get a couple moments where the first thing is we see Dylan kind of go to one of the kids. I think it was Danny that he bullied, and he like saves him from a couple other bullies in a very like, I didn't actually save you. Don't think I'm a good guy. But
he literally was like, me saving you was a coincidence. We're not friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So like one of those scenes, which sometimes you need a scene like that. It's good. It's a classic for a reason.
It's good for the soul.
Yeah. And then we get kind of the quote unquote like adoption of Dylan by I don't know her name, Ari and Brock's mother,
by Marcus's family.
Yeah.
He moves into their definitely haunted house. And that's clearly going to be the like base of ops for superheroing from here on out.
Yeah, another 15. I think there was like 15 more issues of this, or 16 more issues of this, something like that. So still a lot more of Rogue Sun to come, but that's the first volume.
Dude, it was so great.
We actually did a pretty good job there of like doing a recap and talking throughout. Like I think we've talked about doing that before, but we've never really actually managed to do it. I think that was good. We did a good balance there, so I'm happy with that. But anyway, let's get into the full discussion.
Yes.
I don't think we hid how much we enjoyed this throughout that discussion, but why don't you tell me, did you enjoy Rogue Sun?
Dude, I loved Rogue Sun so much. I think that it is another testament of a book that is just good. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where you don't even really have to account for taste. The stories inside are not, inaccessible in any way. Even if you're not there for the kind of Power Rangers superhero plot, you are there for the father-son or the mother-son or the family dynamic plot. It's so well done in all of those areas in a way that then makes the entire thing so good. Because if you like, one of my go-to examples is that even though the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are really, really good, I'm not a huge fan of the Bruce Wayne side of those movies. I think that they're a little weaker to me.
Interesting.
I know it's a bit of a hot take. It's a bit of a hot take.
Because I'm not really a great fan of the more of the Batmaning side.
I know that he's a much more actiony Batman. He's a little too tech heavy. And he does not do a single lick of detective work.
I like that suit and the voice. And anyway, we're not gonna talk about that.
In any case, it's one of those things where because of that, I don't often go back to the Nolan Batman movies just because I'm like, because that part of it's not super great for me. It kind of makes me not want to go watch an entire movie where, that's going to take up 30% of it.
Right.
But this is one of those things where in the suit and out of the suit, in the heart, in the action, it's all doing its job across the board in a way that's really, really satisfying. So super well done writing wise, really amazing characterization. Let's grab your general thoughts, and then I think it's actually very much worth going down a little like character checklist and talking about them individually.
I'm down. So general thoughts. The first thing I want to say is I think this is such a great example of something that works so well as both a contained volume and as a launching point for an ongoing. It definitely like it works so well as a contained volume, but it's very clearly not a miniseries. Like it's not quite what you'd expect a miniseries to do because it's not a miniseries. So but it works really well as a volume to read just as a volume. But it's a phenomenal starting point for an ongoing. It sets up a lot of characters and world stuff, and that's awesome. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Abel's artwork because the designs in Rogue Sun, like we talked about it in Supermassive, where like I think Rogue Sun's design just kind of puts a lot of the other Massiverse, like, character designs to shame a little bit.
Which, like, I love the Radiance designs. I think that they're simple in a way that works super, super well. But then you put them next to someone like Rogue Sun and you're like, oh, less can be more, but also more can be so much more.
More can be more. But yeah, I think the character designs here are just phenomenal. Of like Cataclysm, Rogue Sun, frick, what was the name of that first like robber dude? Suave.
Oh, Suave. Dude, with the mirrored helmet. Oh, so good.
It's great too. Suave's
and when you see Suave later, when he's eating the tarantula, and it's got like the line, "Don't forget, Suave, you've been touched by a god," from like the clearly the big bad, and he looks up and you see the like handprint scar on his face. That handprint scar was so badass.
Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, I love this. This is one of my favorite things in the Massiverse so far. I feel like this might be just below Radiant Red in terms of like my favorite things we've read so far. This was really, really good.
It might be at the top for me.
That's fair. It's close.
Definitely I love above Radiant Black as much as I love Radiant Black.
I agree. You know? I agree. But like you said, Radiant Black is just such a good, solid story. But this is just as good or maybe even better while doing something that's also unique and like you know, an interesting angle. So I think that definitely gives it like those points. But yeah, do you want to start talking about some of the characters? I think we talked already kind of enough about Dylan. So let's jump over Dylan here. Do you want to start with
Marcus?
Okay, let's start with Marcus.
Because he kind of brings everything together. Marcus, of course, they call him the original Rogue Sun, but I think we get the sense that the Sunstone is like a very old artifact. So probably not like the only
it's Rogue interesting because I had that thought too, because like Dottie has a line that's something like, "I've been around much longer than like you or your father," and that she's passed her thing down during generations, but like she weirdly gives the vibe that his started with his father. So I'm very interested because I agree with you, like up until that point I thought it was like a much longer thing, but Dottie definitely gave me the indication that his father was like actually the first Rogue Sun. So I'm interested if maybe the gen was like used for something else before his father like became Rogue Sun.
That's like, kind of the vibe I got at the very least, that there hasn't been a Rogue Sun since like the medieval ages.
That could explain the night thing. That could be that's okay.
Dylan's design is different than Marcus's. Like he doesn't have some of the extra flare pieces, I think.
Yeah, Dylan kind of looks like just one of the coolest motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Marcus looks like cool. But anyway, so
yeah, Marcus, terrible person. Just off the bat. But also, you know, saving the world time and again, superhero. Like it's such a well done.
And his new family clearly loves him like quite a bit, despite even his like, you know, checking out on them from time to time. Like, so you get the vibe that he's like at least a halfway decent father to the new family, despite him being just the worst husband and father to, you know, OG family. So
because literally ups and leaves Dylan's mom when Dylan is like less than 2 years old. We'll get to this
by his own words, because he wanted to.
Yes. There's really good, you know, we can hit it now, why not?
I love that line, by the way. That line that is like, "I left you because I had to." This is so to Dylan. He's like, "Dylan, I left you because I had to. I left her because I wanted to."
Yeah.
Like, oh damn.
Huge. There's so many good like one-liners in this book. Shout out Ryan Parrott.
Yeah.
But we can touch on their relationship real quick, because he says this line to Dylan. We get kind of the perspective from his mom, like, oh, he just up and left us because he couldn't handle it. We get some clear subtext of something is wrong, and that's why he's leaving. He's like leaving to protect them in some sort of superhero way, because he's like gone for 6 months. He comes back and he's clearly like kind of sad about leaving. At least I thought that was very apparent in the art.
Like I think that it's like one of those things that's left very open for reasons. I think there's several ways you can read it, because there was the thing of like, oh, did he leave for superhero stuff? But then he immediately found this other family, so she kind of wrote that off. And then like we see it and it's like, well, that does kind of seem to be the vibe because he was gone for 6 months and then he come back. But then based on his dialogue, you kind of get the vibe of like, no, maybe he was leaving because of like something between them or something with her, because at least that's what he kind of ends up claiming. So you kind of get left this very like thing of like, okay, is he sad there because he doesn't want to leave them in general, or is he sad because he doesn't want to leave Dylan? And
I mean, I think it's certainly that he doesn't want to leave Dylan. Like, I think that there's an external force having him leave Dylan that is not his wife.
That's my point. I don't think I think it's open ended to whether it's his wife or not, based on the following dialogue. So that's my point. There is, I think you can read that in two ways: of if he's sad to be leaving his family, or if he's just sad to be leaving Dylan because he's actually leaving because of Gwen. I think it's very interesting to see if they'll reveal more things about like Gwen during their relationship, because obviously we don't actually get to see much outside of those like important moments, and it kind of leaves us at this clear tale of like, was Gwen fully in the right up until she then makes this decision to seek out and kill him, where then obviously she starts to trend into like evil territory? Or is it that she maybe always had something a little bit not right with her and he handled it absolutely horribly, but like that was his reason? So it's very open-ended to how bad and how good and what the dynamics are. Because like we said, nobody's a good person, but I think there's a lot of gray area as to like when they're each overstepping and where they're each going wrong. Which I think is super cool.
The vibe that I very much got, just as like a little goon who can't help but be like, oh, what could be going on here? To me, it very much read as Dylan is in danger in some way, so he left because he like needed to protect Dylan, like on this 6-month stint, and now he's given Dylan, he's like willed the stone to Dylan because Dylan's gonna have to protect himself from whatever this is. Because he does say that he's like been watching Dylan. That's how he knows that his grades are slipping and stuff. But I very much get the vibe that I think that no matter how you read it, his wife, he wanted to leave her, like regardless of whether or not he wanted to leave his family.
I don't fully agree with that. Like I said, I think weirdly, if I was to go with your reading, I'd assume he didn't want to leave her at that point, and then he's like using that at the end to try to manipulate Dylan. Like I don't think you have to read it as him wanting to leave his wife. I mean,
you don't have to. Okay, I think that it to me it reads pretty clearly as that, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to read it that can be equally valid. But so they have that amazing relationship drama going on there, and because we only touched on it in the recap, I guess we did expand on it a little bit, but I think that it's worth having its own little section here. The way that they show the two of them interacting with Dylan, because like you said, they physically cannot interact with each other because Marcus can hear her, but she can't hear him. Yeah. The fact that from listening to how Dylan is responding to Marcus, she's able to glean things. And even when he's not responding to Marcus, and she's like, oh, he's blaming me for this, isn't he? Or he's talking about this, isn't he? It was so well done. It was so great. And was very much like a vibe of like, oh, it makes me like her. And then he would bring stuff up like, oh, even when I was out saving people, she thought that I was just out sleeping around or something. It's like, oh, I kind of see his side. And so, like, really just a phenomenal sequence when that's going on. And the way that it's clearly stressing Dylan the fuck out. There are multiple times where he, like, stops them by just, like, freezing in the panel and just, like, yelling for them to shut the fuck up. It's so emotionally.
There's a great one where, like, he's framed by panels behind him of each of them. And it's Marcus going, shut up, you bitch. And then Gwen going, Marcus doesn't love you. And he never. And then, like, you just get Dylan exploding and, like, punching a wall. Yeah. And it's just so cool.
It's so well done to see the way that they distill what, like, the worst thing Dylan could hear from either one of them happening in that moment, where it's just, like, them feeding into his complicated relationships with both of them, especially more recently.
And it's just both of them fucking up so bad because they both essentially have, I think, the opportunity in the last two issues to get him onto their side if they don't fuck it up. And they both fuck it up to where he takes out his mother and then banishes his father forever.
Oh my god, which was such a huge moment.
We get that panel at the end too where he's like calling to his father and he doesn't come back, and like but the gravestone's there and just chills.
Like, the fact that I think it's the first time I like got a little choked up as I was about to say this. I think it's the first time in the book where we hear him call Marcus dad. He's like, Marcus?
Yeah, he goes, Marcus?
dad.
Dad.
And oh my god, literal
like,
goosebumps.
You get the gravestone, and you get not 100% because you get like this big spark of energy as he flies off, but it kind of looks like some of the energy's going toward the gravestone. So I'm interested to see if like his desire for his father will come back will like lead the gem to like bring it back. I think that might be the vibe.
And we also know that the death is very impermanent. Both, not like in a way that's negative, the way that we've talked about with comics before, but both, like, not Brooks. I keep confusing Brock. And Books from Drawing Blood.
What? That's such a
their names are so similar. But the fact that both Brock and Ari had like ways of making contact with him, kind of like Brock was going for his grass, and we saw when Ari brought Demonica out, Demonica could feel his soul in the gem. Like, it was very accessible to her there. So even though that wasn't Ari's intention, it was very much presently there. So I certainly agree that this is not going to be the end of what we see from Marcus. And I think that's phenomenal.
I love...
Go ahead.
No, continue. You continue.
I love how open that is. Like you said, it's such good ongoing material, especially with both Marcus being gone and, ostensibly for now, his mom being gone. Gwen's gone. It won't be safe to take her out of the diamond or to even, like, interact with her, really, until they can separate her from this power, which I can only assume is going to be by defeating the creature that dubs itself a god.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But so I want to go back because you mentioned Brock there with like what his like going after his father. I want to talk about Brock because I think Brock is written so phenomenally across these 6 issues. From being like the first setup, like, oh, this is gonna be our villain. Even his father can tell that his 10-year-old son's betrayed him because he can tell he's that off. Like, oh, it's the evil 10-year-old like thing. Set up so well to like get that swerve ball of like, oh no, he just wants his father back so badly that he's like going to these routes, and his father's just an awful person for suspecting his 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
To then Dylan having to be the one to lie to Brock about what his father's saying to like make him okay. To Brock then like finally like hugging Dylan and like accepting him and them having that awesome moment.
Dude,
like,
you need to touch on that
Brock's
real quick though.
Is so good. It's so good.
I need you to explain to our dear listeners the line about what Marcus was saying thing, because it's going to tie back in when we talk about Ari as well.
Let me find that. Is that issue 2? I'm like trying to find the exact.
It's either issue 2 or 3. I think it's 2.
Okay, let me quickly go scroll through here. But the essential vibe is that Dylan ends up telling Brock that like his father's just having Dylan hold on to the gem until I think it's issue 3. So I'm gonna go another way.
Yeah, holding on to the sunstone.
Until he's ready when he's older. And like you get the like very little kid thing of Brock, like when a kid can kind of tell you're lying, but like really wants to believe you. So they do like that, you promise? And he's like, yeah, I promise. And then he just like hugs him, and it's such a nice moment.
And it's clearly such a like, Dylan grew up without his father, and Brock is about to have to grow up without his father. And you can see Dylan, I think it's one of those times when we see it, I think, again with the bully scene at the end, and when he's like very against killing people and stuff. We can see a number of times where Dylan's kind of like more heroic good guy side does make a bit of an appearance, and I think this is one of those really, really big ones where he is going to extend this empathy.
Of like, oh, he can actually be a hero and not just like somebody who's fighting bad guys. Do you want me to go through these 2 pages? I found them now. So
go for it. Yeah,
try to go through these. Okay, so we have this is right after the witch doctor thing that we kind of explained earlier. So we have kind of Brock explaining to Dylan why he's so pissed off. And so basically it starts with Brock saying this. Then he went out to save the world just like he always did, except this time he didn't come back. I lost my dad and my hero on the same night. And then with a close-up of Rogue's son, a.k.a. Dylan, we get the line from Brock, and he was replaced by you, someone who hates him. To get to talk to my dad whenever you want, but I don't. you get to wear the helmet and follow in his footsteps. And then as like Brock's starting to like wipe away tears and try not to cry, but I don't, and it's not fair. And then after that goddamn shit, Marcus says to fucking Dylan, we should go. Like, you absolute asshat, and you get a shut up from Dylan that is so good into just, okay, his father just said the worst thing ever. So Dylan just goes into full like damage control with, Brock, your dad loves and trusts you. I mean, I'm only holding on to the stupid stone until you're old enough, and then you're going to take it off my hands, okay? Then we get the you promise line, and absolutely, you're going to be a superhero one day, and then you get to deal with him yapping in your ear all the time, and then you get him jumping forward and hugging a very confused Dylan. So, and just two beautifully written pages.
And it ties in so well to Dylan's personal arc with his dad as well. And with his mom, at the end of the book, he's criticizing his mom because she's saying that like all of this is happening because of Marcus, and he's like, no, this is happening because you don't trust me. And clearly that like trust is such an important value to Dylan, and the fact that he was able to clock in and extend that, like he was truly doing the best he could with Brock, and it was so good.
It was like the vibe of like as if he was talking to like a younger version of himself, and he's like, oh, like dad fucked up with him the same way he did with me, but I'm not going to let him think that that's what happened.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hear what I would have wanted to hear. And it's such a cool way to go through it. Like I said, these two pages are so fantastically written, and then like just really well illustrated, and like where the moments of space are, where the close-ups are on certain characters. There's a lot of like Brock speaking and close-ups of Dylan, and then close-ups of Brock, and like it's just so emotional, and it's so ridiculously well done. Some of the best stuff.
Well done. And book. I mean, I think I've specifically made mention of, and you may have as well, that neither of us are big Damian fans. No. But I truly think Damian is at his best when he's interacting with Dick, and you can see the like beginning seeds of that like older brother figure in Dylan coming out for this emotionally fucked up younger brother figure, and I am so excited to see their relationship develop as they go on. I hope that it doesn't, immediately turn very sweet and sickly, and that it never does, frankly, because even looking at the way that Damian and Dick interact now, it's got that kind of like veneer of snootiness from Damian, and I hope that that's the type of like veneer of dislike that Brock is able to keep just by being the weird child that he is. I think they're going to be my favorite part of this book by the end of it.
I agree. Do you want to hit, I think Ari's kind of the last character that we probably should talk about here.
Yes.
I'm going to say my thing with Ari, while I like a lot of the like things we get with her, I think Ari is one of the characters who doesn't quite show up as much as she should for the plot relevance that she gets. Like, I don't think there's enough like fallout of her letting a villain like out to go after
Agreed.
Dylan.
And
like,
I think
it's an ongoing, so hopefully we'll get more with that, and like that's kind of where we're going. But there's a lot of like, oh yeah, she kind of did that, and we're gonna move on, and that's a little bit upsetting.
She also gets, I think she gets a brunt of the exposition weight on her shoulders. Like a lot of what she's doing, she's there to help out Dylan, and so a lot of what she does is kind of move Dylan along on his journey, so she doesn't get to have that that moment in the woods that Brock did.
Let me say something weird.
Yeah.
And you can push back on it. But weirdly, I think her stronger scenes and her stronger bits come from when she was used as more of an exposition dump compared to when they were trying to do character stuff. Like I think her character side actually failed more than just her being like, I'll be your like expositional guide. Like I think those scenes were actually really well done for exposition dumps. And then when they tried to give her the character stuff of being like, now she's letting a villain go because she wants her father back, that didn't get enough follow.
And I think the problem is that because she also had the weight of these exposition scenes, she didn't get like Brock is not in the book really much outside of his like one issue and the little liners he gets. So she has more page time, but so much more of that page time is not dedicated to her characterization and stuff, which is where I think that she falls through. But I do very much like where she's going. I will be very excited if she becomes like a kind of magic user, not sidekick, but helpful person for Rogue Sun. I think that she is in a really good position to become the kind of Dylan is a character who needs to be butting heads. Like, this man needs to be butting heads with people. The entirety of this volume, he's butting heads with his mom and his dad.
Butt heads with. Like, I don't know if you can create a character he wouldn't butt heads with. Like, this man is
correct.
Just a head butter.
He is. He lives life head first. And I think that in the coming volume, if not the rest of the series, I think that not Gwen. I keep trying to call her Gwen because she looks kind of like Gwen Stacy. But I was hoping I remember her name by now. Ari. I think Ari is going to become that like kind of headbutting force for him, where she's going to have her idea about how to do things, and she's going to be kind of like the keeper of the keys on a lot of the way that Rogue Sun operates, on a lot of like kind of technical levels. Like, where do you put your villains when they're done? And how do you fight someone who sucks souls? I think that she is going to be the keeper of keys for that and become our new kind of Marcus stand-in, where she's going to be a person for butt heads with. And I'm also very
interesting because I actually you had thrown out like that you were hoping that they didn't do it, but you threw out the idea that Brock might get like some sort of a like essentially villain arc type thing. I think it's more likely that Ari does than Brock. I think it's much more likely that Ari breaks bad. And I think that there's a decent chance that Ari ends up breaking bad. So I'm very interested to see where they go with her character. I think at the very least, even if we don't get like a full villain arc, I think that we're going to get more than like butting heads and her helping him or like control. I think we'll get her as more of like a, maybe not full antagonist, but like maybe like a,
like a kind of Terra situation.
Kind of like I was thinking like almost like a like a Punisher Daredevil thing where like she'll be taking on villains in a like very different way and like trying to get to them before he does and take them out. Like I think they'll be kind of in competition.
I can very much see that, and I would also be very excited for that.
I'm very excited to see where this goes.
To touch on her relationship with Marcus, though, because I think that we hit it great with Brock, and there's a really good scene that kind of parallels the one with Brock, with Ari, where they've picked up the half werewolf, half vampire, and Ari learns that her dad is talking to Dylan, and she's like, Is he there right now? In, I think, a very valid way that a teenager would ask about their recently deceased father.
Yeah.
And fucking Marcus is like, tell her I'm not here. It's like, what the fuck, Marcus?
And I love that. That's like such a thing of like, and I get maybe it's because she's older too, but like, I think it's an issue part. Like that conversation is an issue 2, and his conversation with Brock is in issue 3. So maybe it's even just that quick of a character growth thing where here he's still not lying for Marcus, but he just verbatim says what he says. Like he says to her, he said to tell you he's not here. So he doesn't cushion the blow there at all. He's like, your father's an asshole.
Yeah.
And then when we get to issue 3 with Brock, he cushions the blow. So I think it's a combination of like a little bit of growth and also like the way that he'll treat somebody older versus like, he's like, you're 15, 14, whatever you are. He's like, you can understand that our father's an asshole. Like, get that. But with the like 10-year-old, he's like, no, I'm gonna make sure that you
exactly. And I think that it's also very much the sense of he did just take away Brock's chance to bring his father back by beating up the witch doctor. So like, it's a different situation, but very much a parallel one. Where it's how does Marcus deal with his children?
This is such a small gripe,
and the answer is he doesn't.
Just a little thing about that scene. I don't get how he did take away his brother's thing, because like the guy has the thing, he then beats up the guy, and the guy runs away. And I was like, I think with the thing not get dropped or whatever, like or he can take the thing and nobody. It felt a little weird where I was like, it didn't feel obvious that the thing was like gone with him because he was like out with it, and then he got his shit kicked in. And he was like all over the ground. I was like, I felt like if it was in his hand and then he got his shit kicked in, like how'd he put it somewhere? Like I think that's on the ground somewhere or something like that. Anyway, super small gripe, but my immediate thought was like, oh, he probably still has that, right? So now he's going to go try to do something. and then like he didn't, and it was very clear by the scene after that like that wasn't what was going to happen. I was like, oh, I guess the thing's gone. So
I think
just
part of what helped me in that scene was that Dylan disrupted the deal. So like they hadn't exchanged items yet.
They hadn't exchanged yet, but it was like it was right there. It was,
and then
right
it
there.
Was all about how like, oh, the kid went back on his deal by not coming alone. So you know.
No, but like after that, like when he starts being the guy, like and he interrogates the guy, like the witch doctor holds it out like to Rogue Sun as like this is what he was trying to get. So and then he continues like do. You know, I think in case I'm trying to remember exactly what happens.
I mean, maybe if Dylan was more motivated to bring his dad back from the dead, he would have taken it.
I was like,
but...
you know, I would have thought that anyway. That was just a super little thing, but I just wanted to say it because you know, it was a thought that I had in the moment. I was like, oh, do they not have that? Okay, I guess they don't.
I support you having thoughts.
Yeah. So anyway, this was a really cool book. I really enjoyed this.
Book. Yeah,
I'm hoping that in 6 months or whatever, we'll be caught up and we can actually start. Picking this book up.
Hey, it's nice. The Massiverse is going on hiatus just for us, so that we can keep catching up. Yeah, maybe we'll skip a few of the Radiant Blacks in terms of like actual pod episodes, or we'll bunch a few together, so that we can move through a little more quickly.
If there's ever a double up, that'd be super nice. Where we can just like do 2 in a row, and we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll like. I don't know if there's a big like thing that happens at some point. Maybe we'll like double up in a month or do something and try to catch up more.
Because I think we're both very anxious to catch up.
I think the rough thing is that we're like, I think we're not moving that much faster than the like books are moving. So I think we're catching up very slowly because we're reading like 6 issues a month, and I think like 3 issues come out of the Massiverse a month at least, sometimes more. So I think we're very much like with like 3 to 5 issues coming out a month, except for the months where they are on hiatus. I think we're like barely catching up.
You also have to keep in mind Radiant Black started doing like the 0.5s as well. So like there's a lot
that was where I was there. That's why I said 3 because every month has 2 Radiant Blacks and 1 Rogue Sun is like a bare minimum. And then it's like, okay, is there one shot this month? Is there a mini series that's overlapping with this month? Did this month have a no one issue? You know, like there's all that extra stuff. That's why I said like I think it's 3 at the bare minimum per month is like just their ongoings. So
we're very slowly catching up.
I'm interested to see what the volumes of Radiant Black will look like when we get to the 0.5s. Like, is it still 6 issues to a volume, or is it then 12 issues to a volume?
I would think 12 issues, but I also still don't quite understand what the 0.5s are.
It's different perspective. It's Nathan and what's his
Nathan
face?
and whatever his name is.
Yeah, it's both of their perspectives of like the thing.
But like, fine. It's fine. I'm sure it'll be cool. I'm excited to look at it. I worry it will grow wearisome for me.
Too. Because like my shop always has them like, I think a lot of times the like main covers connect in a like one bigger cover. Because my shop will have them next to each other on the shelf, so they make like their nice cover. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that.
I like that.
Anyway,
yeah, we'll
rambling about nonsense.
We'll try to catch up more quickly. I don't know if we'll add it to the pull list though. Like I'm sure you and I will pull it, but maybe we'll stick with our kind of Radiant Black Massiverse updates every month.
We'll see.
Not every
month,
how, but
how
every
it
volume.
Ends up going.
Yeah.
We have a plan for something else to end up being a monthly thing, so I would like to free up a week if we do catch up with the Massiverse at some point.
Yeah, that's what week 3 is for.
But we're gonna have. We'll talk about it later. But we're not gonna have a free week starting next month or 2 months from now. So, we'll figure that out.
Oh, you mean free up a week for something that's not scheduled? I got you. In any case,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Saying like have a new open week. Anyway, let's we've rambled. There was an episode this past Wednesday. It'll be linked at the end of the episode. There's going to be an episode next Wednesday. As always, last Saturday we did our Ranking Teen Titans teams bonus episode. As per usual, you guys seem to love the ranking videos, so they are not going anywhere. And we love the ranking videos too. They're so much fun. So check that out. It's a really cool episode. We had a lot of fun talking about different Teen Titans teams. But yeah, that's pretty much everything we have going on. So, as always, see you next week. Comic Geeks.